an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising Book 4, Iron Gold, chapters 13, 14, 15, and, yes, 16. In these chapters, well, Lyria is taking better care of the golds than the golds have been taking care of her. Props, I guess. Lysander is in a really tense situation, and Darrow suffers a huge loss when the Obsidians decide they are out. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to, is it Ashley today that commissioned this? Yes, it is. Thank you, Ashley. Ashley is also the only one who's here in the chat. So, yeah, Ashley's like, I am going to be here for the episode that I paid for. Thank you very much. And I am delighted to have you. So these chapters are tough. I'm tempted to jump ahead and talk about Darrow right away because, of course, he's the character I know the best, and I'm extremely interested in what's happening with him. I just realized that I didn't even mention Ephraim in my opening, and I think it's because so far he is the character I am the least interested in terms of the personality that I have seen of him so far. I just don't like him very much, and he feels very stuck. So it's not surprising to me when I step back and think about it that I didn't even bring him up. But he's well written. That's not the problem. It's just that he seems like a real fucking bummer. So let's start with 13, Lyria. First, the screams. This actually won't take that long because what happens here, boiled down, is that the Red Hand continues to attack. There are tons of people that go down in really horrible, like, it's not regular bullets. It's like these sort of, I can't remember what she calls them at another point. She uses a word to describe them as if they're almost like, what I keep picturing is almost pieces of rebar, like, you know what I mean? And I don't really think that's accurate, but it's what the word she used called to mind, and I'll probably get to it in a moment. But I was like, all of this is really beginning to get out of hand, and suddenly the Republic shows up. They're starting to put a stop to it. Somebody crashes to the ground. I believe that it is a Telemanus, and she rescues him. So that's the summary of this chapter. However, there is a lot of detail about the people who are being attacked and the way that they are reacting, how many folks are very, very old and unable to defend themselves, and how this like group of people don't give any shits at all. There's even like an old man that is just sitting up in the mud, and she says, only in the back of my mind do I realize, because he starts wobbling, his head strangely lopsided, his body shudders again. Only in the back of my mind do I realize metal is doing this to him. Another bullet rips through him. Oh, she says bullet. I could have swore there was another word. Another bullet rips through him, and he pitches sideways, howling. The children shriek and try to run. Metal shreds them, kicking their heads back, contorting their bodies into a manic dance. Something hot and hard punches me in the shoulder. And she's looking up as she like gets laid out on her back, and she sees this ship coming toward her. At first she doesn't know what it is. And she's thinking like, maybe this is the Veil, you know, and I'm being brought to see my dad. Which I think is a pretty safe assumption that her father is already dead at this point, seeing as how these people are apparently leaving only corpses in their wake. As long as you are not actively hiding, they will take you out, and her father wasn't able to hide, so probably, yeah. So the teardrop, which is the ship, turns into 3. And somebody starts yelling, "The Republic." Heartbeat concussions ripple through the earth as missiles fall. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. The fat ship litters the sky with little sparkling seeds. The seeds begin to fall, coming together like a flight of sparrows, then splintering apart 1,000 meters above us. A demon of metal in the shape of a man. His armor is orange, his helmet shaped like the face of a snarling canine. He lifts his left fist and points it toward the raider firing line. Sound and fury erupt. Then he's gone, back into the sky, trailing a war howl through an electronic speaker. Telemanus! Lyria, Liam says, touching my leg. Lyria, are you hurt? He says through tears. I'm here. I'm here. I hold him and sob among the corpses. I'm here. The Red Hand are dead or fled to cover up fire at the sky. 2 bone-white Republic ships fire at the hand trucks and landed transports. Steel men whip through the air. It's too much. Too loud. I take Liam away from it, following the few survivors of the massacre to hide among the reeds in the riverbed. There, hunkered in fear, we listen to the battle. A dozen others survived. They flinch when a bomb goes off, but I sit in silence, rocking back and forth, watching bugs go out over the water. My sister is safe. Her children are safe. I was sort of wondering about this. She's saying this for certain. And I think it's just her, like, convincing her. I think this is meant to be her kind of doing a mantra and being like, calm down, they're okay, even though she doesn't know. And then she sees the knight that had yelled Telemanus fall from the sky, trailing smoke and landing in the river. Nobody moves. They just see him like sink into the water. And I can't remember the name of all the Telemanuses. So I am super like uncertain which one this is going to be. And she tries to say, we got to help him, and nobody moves. She says it again. And then when they don't respond, she says, you gutless slags. I gotta say, that was very funny to me. It just like, it felt just such a departure in tone in some ways. I stumble to the water, wading out into it until it's at my neck, deeper than I thought. I won't be able to lift him by myself. Spotting a long length of rope tethering 6 of the fishing boats together, I wade back and unravel the rope, then press back into the depths. The current tugs at my waist like a bad dancing partner. Soon the water's over my head. I dive down, looking through the murk for the fallen knight. I can't see him. The silt is so thick I have to surface twice before I find him by luck when my right foot kicks a piece of metal. I trace my feet over the armor, barely able to find the outline of the man. I tie the rope around his leg as best I can with my wrecked shoulder and kick my way back to the surface, trailing the rope behind. When I make it back to the shore, a group of Reds waits to help me, all brave and heroic after I do all the bloody work. That was a very good line. I was thinking like that exact same thing and was delighted that she just gave voice to exactly how I was feeling. So they managed to drag him free, but he's got this fucking helmet on. And he is huge in comparison to her. I always forget that all of the beings in this universe that are of different colors, their bodies are dramatically different from each other a lot of the time. So Reds are made to be really small. And she describes his helmet as being almost as large as her torso, which is bonkers. Water pulses out of the holes in the metal. I run my fingers over it, expecting it to be hot for some reason. It's cold and faintly iridescent. So they're trying to figure out how to open his helmet, and eventually somebody is able to find this button. Water pours out of it, which they had been suspicious that since he wasn't moving, the suit didn't keep water out, and perhaps he was drowning in there, which all I could think about here was, I can't remember if it is, I think it's like the second book where Darrow gets like trapped because they use an EMP and his suit just starts to like drown him because he's locked at the bottom of that riverbed. But that was what I kept thinking was like when he went down, he may have been unconscious already, but if he wasn't, he just laid there as the water poured in and he began to like just suffocate. Like that is so hideous. Ugh. Um A red beard covers his heavy jaw. His head is bald and titanic, and a slim scar stretches down his right cheekbone. His nose is smashed flat, and his eyes are small and ringed with delicate eyelashes. He's a gold, the first I've ever seen with my own two eyes. That is wild to me. That is the first time she's ever seen a gold. Like, I just assumed, that they had been sort of around, and the fact that she's never even seen one before, I feel that's pretty revealing about this whole situation in a different dimension than I was even considering. Um, so he actually comes back to consciousness, vomits water. Overhead, the sky is torn to shreds as more supersonic ships come from the sky and descend to save the camp. The Red Hand will retreat, but Camp 121 is burning. And that's really the thing. They came in and saved them. Delightful, wonderful, love that. The damage is done, guys. It can't be undone. And I already have my suspicions based on some things that were said in the earlier chapters that the only reason the Red Hand was able to come in and do this is because of something Darrow did that sort of stretched the resources a little bit tighter than they should have been. And maybe that's not it at all. Maybe I am leaping to conclusions because I'm a little pissed at Darrow right now, and so he's sort of bitch eating crackers for me. But if it is what I think it is, I am really going to feel a fucking way about that. I can't lie. And it's just so... The ripple effects of everything are made to feel very real in this book because of all of the different POVs. And I'm really, really curious about this because it's something that I have run into recently with covering Sookie, and I think that I mentioned this maybe in the first episode, but I can't recall. The Sookie Stackhouse books, all 13, no, there are 13 total books. The first 12 books are written solely from Sookie's perspective, and that is it. And then, in the last book of the whole series, the author decides to play around a little bit and jump from one POV to another. And it is really interesting. Like, it really just adds something to be out of Sookie's head. And I don't think necessarily that the book series total would have been, quote, better if she had done that from the start. I think it hits like it does because she hadn't done that for the rest of the series. However, Miles is somebody who really, really endorses the concept of multiple POVs in books, especially if you have a large story happening, because he feels like it's just too limiting to only be in one person's head. And it's interesting that this author had written everything from Darrow's perspective in the first 3 books and then departed from that. And I'm wondering if it was like, I have to stay in Darrow's perspective because that's what everybody expects for the first trilogy, and so I feel kind of locked into it. Did he want to break out into different POVs and decided against it because he felt like his authors or his readers had an expectation? Or was he actually like wanting to only depict Darrow's POV and he was fine with it? I really don't like... when he went into this, did he choose different POVs because he explicitly wanted to show us how the ripple effects worked and how everybody else has been affected by Darrow's actions? The feeling that I am getting so far, especially with the way that Darrow has been depicted, is that the first 3 books, seeing from Darrow's perspective, we understand what a heartfelt person he is, how much he believes in this cause, how gutsy he is, how willing to risk things he is. And then we are moving into these next books, and I don't remember if you guys have told me if this is another like trilogy again, but it feels like we're seeing what it's like for the people around Darrow in a way that is supposed to sort of bring him down a notch or two. Like we have been shown Darrow as I don't want to say godlike because not really. He has still been human for us, but there has been a sense of him being bigger and better than any person you've really met. And I am really feeling like the vibe of these chapters is Darrow ain't shit. And yeah, he has done some great things. But look at the fucking people suffering and how many of them there are. And what kind of say do they get? Perhaps it's not even about Darrow. Perhaps the author just wanted us to see what it's like for regular people who aren't golds, to finally be on the ground with the fucking small folk, to use a Song of Ice and Fire reference. Either way, I am quite into it. I really, really like this. And I know I started off being like, I don't want to read anymore. This is so sad. And I stand by that to a degree. It is sad. It's a real bummer sometimes. But it's also kind of fascinating, especially in light of like how Darrow has aged and how much things have kind of soured for him in some ways. So, ooh, Ashley says it'll be 4 books this time. Oh man, I was thinking if it wasn't a trilogy that it would only be 2, but it's 4. Wild. Okay. So okay. Sorry guys, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So let's go to Ephraim. He is back at this bar that had used to be like kind of a dope spot. And it has become a real dive is the energy here. And he is here to I almost used the word celebrate, and that is absolutely wildly inappropriate. He is here to honor and commemorate the loss of his partner, who it turns out was Trig, Holiday's brother. And that I remember her mentioning that he had somebody, and she said him, so we knew that he was gay. Uh, was it her brother or just her friend? Was Trig her brother? That he was her brother, right? Am I misremembering that? Um, but anyway, so he comes to this bar. But apparently, this is something that they do every year, but it is 10 years past now, and so he isn't sure that she's going to show up. It's kind of a vibe like they've been consistently meeting, and the 10-year thing is significant enough a period of time that both of them are sort of uncertain whether the other is going to keep doing this after this long. So he describes like the moment that he first met Trig, and he got milk spilled down the back of his neck. It says a glass of spiked milk. I swung around to teach the prick some manners, but one look at that goofy face and baggy suit, I started laughing so hard I couldn't raise a fist. The man stared back at me with a milk mustache and wide, apologetic eyes. Who the hell orders milk in a place like this? The man was young, simple, and 2 years into the Legion from some Earth backwater. We sat and talked in that corner booth and closed the place down. The rest was history. He was my refuge, my small town boy with a big heart and a bigger laugh. Jove knows what he saw in me. So, Ephraim is in a bad mood. It's understandable. But he decides that he is going to turn to the people in the next booth who are bothering him and pick a fight, basically. I reserved this booth, citizen. They don't take reservations here. Slag off. Sit there, says the larger man, a gray with a sour look, and shut it before you get carved up. And you're going to do the carving? You don't look like you can even stand. He stands. Please, bitch. I used to own little sleets like you in Whitehold. By the look of his knotted forearms, he could easily break me to kindling. I should just move on. Whitehold? That's odd. I thought they sent pig sodomizers to Deepgrave. Both stand, blades shimmering in the low light. I stumble backward, too late in realizing my tongue's drunker than the rest of me. I really like that turn of phrase. It's sort of like the verbal equivalent of like your eyes being too big for your stomach, when you get too much food and you're not able to finish. Um, so they are about to go in on him when the door opens and everybody drops quiet. And Ephraim doesn't even have to turn around. He knows exactly why. And here comes Holiday. And I don't remember if she was described like in appearance that intricately when we first met her, but if she was, I didn't recall her description. So when she comes in and we get a description of her, this didn't ring any bells for me at all. Um, I turned to see a gray woman my height, but built like a snub-nosed boxer, with the physical dimensions of a concrete building block. Freckles, made dark by her time under the harsh Mercurian sun, maul an ugly, broad nose, while her hair, shaved on the sides of the head, shoots up from the top of her head like a surfacing great white. Her military uniform is all black, but every eye, wary bartender to dazed whore, scans the red flying horse standard on the forearm of her jacket and the matted wolf cloak that hangs from her left shoulder. Pegasus Legion, Howler Battalion, one of the Reaper's own. So, she walks up to them, says, "Move," and they leave. And that is that. This is just... There is nobody who is going to do or say shit to this woman. And I love this for her because Holiday, we know what a fucking ride or die she has been. And she deserves it. She has earned this, in my opinion. Um, so, and I love that she like gives them money, even though she like gets them out of the booth that she wants. She doesn't just decide I'm going to lean on my position here. She like compensates them. 100 credit Loon Crescent, a gold Octavia. Still the currency of the day, despite the Rising's sad attempts to mint new legal tender. For the whiskey, citizens. They skulk away and conversations slowly start again through the bar. So, she asks him basically, why are you starting shit? And he's like, I'm me. And she says, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. There's an obsidian over there. And he's like, wait, what? And he goes, oh shit. All right, I'll be right back. And then he goes, and it's Volga, and I hated this so much. Volga is seeming to me to be a bit of a cinnamon roll. And it's so clear that she just wants to be friends very badly. And he just says, we are not friends. We are business associates, and that is it. Go home and stop following me just because you don't have your own life. She hunches her shoulders against the rain and disappears up a flight of stairs to the taxi level above. Y'all, this man can be as miserable as he wants to strangers, but don't you talk like this to Volga. She wanted to go to the zoo. She is a pure, sweet soul looking out for her friend because she is worried about him, and you may not think you're friends. But I'll tell you what, dude. If she shows up because she's worried about you, because she can see that you are angsty, and you are, I got news for you. She's your friend whether you like it or not. That's a done deal. So, sorry about it, but also, them's the breaks. It's not the anniversary of Trigg's death. It's his birthday. That's what it is. let's see. Uh, the place has gone to shit. Yep. I prefer the tiki torches to whatever this is. Maybe we're just getting too cultured. Still has to be better than the Mercury sand belt. Hell yes it is, she says heavily. She's never been a looker, but the latest tour has been hard on her. Still, most of the wear seems on the inside. She sits at the table with the weight of the planet pressing her down into the whiskey bottle. You fall in the rain? I ask. She nods. Saw the newsreels, looked like a shit show. What's one of those like, a rain? She shrugs. Good for weapons contractors. Hostile to the human experience for everyone else. So, they cheers each other, and then they have to make conversation. It appears that they only meet for this once a year, and they do not have an easy energy with each other at all, so making convo is awkward and strange and stilted and uncomfortable. And she's asking, like, what are you up to? Still contracting? And he doesn't want to tell her that he doesn't have a job right now. And she's, saying that she is trying to stay busy, in a meaningful way. I tried that. My hand instinctively drifts to my chest where the scars from the gold are hidden under my suit jacket. Didn't take. And she is like on her comm console that's with her and her data pad, she's getting a lot of notifications here, but she winds up sort of ignoring some of them until she leaves, at which point she gets a look on her face. And I believe that is her hearing the news about Darrow, probably. So they have a conversation here about what's going on with the Republic, what he believes in, how like he feels betrayed, basically. And this is something that is so frustrating because this is the world. Anybody who has money and power is in a position to assist anybody who actually has enough more power to take them down, which means that they have leverage to negotiate with and are not at the mercy of the court system and legal proceedings that the average one of us with no power and no money is always just subject to, with, depending on what judge we get, little to no mercy. And so all of these golds who did horrific shit because they had money and weapons and armies and the Republic needed them, they were pardoned because they had to be absorbed into this war. And like, I of course I understand his rage on this. It's wrong. It just is. Also, it's practical. And you're in a war. So to a degree, I can see how you would have to make this deal to win. On the other hand, I can't help but feel like I might be very, very dishonorable and make a deal with these guys to get their money and their weapons and their men and their ships. And then if we won the war, punish them anyway. Surprise! You thought you were out of it? You are not. But I have a bit of a streak of rage, that I don't know Mustang quite has. And he later on actually watches the footage of Aja killing Trig, the way that she just like lifts him up in the air. It's such a gruesome death in the moment, but imagining seeing it after the fact on camera is just so horrible to me, and she tries, Holiday, to convince him to come back and unwind the syndicate, she says. I don't remember if we know who that is yet, but he basically is like, I'm trying to keep myself safe by staying away from this shit, which I wish Trig had also done. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't for him. It's not even for me. It's for you, so you can sink in it and let it rot you. That's not what he would have wanted. He would have wanted you to have a life, a purpose. Why did you bother to come? I didn't make you. Because my brother loved you, she said sharply. She lowers her voice. He would have wanted more for you than this. Then maybe you shouldn't have gotten him killed. The old holiday wouldn't hit me. The way that he says that makes it sound like she does. But he doesn't actually say that. And it was weird because there's no moment later of him saying that he has a pain in his eye or something. It's just the old holiday wouldn't hit me. And then it's been 10 years, asshole. You have to let him go or it's going to eat you up. I shrug. What's left to eat? I didn't deserve her brother's love, and I sure as shit don't need her pity. I'm not coming back here next year. So sorry, we'll miss you. Break the chains and all that. You know what rubs me raw? I say up to her. You look down at me because you're in that little uniform, and you think me cheap? But you're the one too stupid to realize you're wearing a collar. You're the one he'd be ashamed of. The only good thing about him being dead is that he doesn't have to see you like this. So long, F, as she glances back down at her data pad, a shadow of fear passes over her face. So he gets Slosh, and he goes out in the rain, looks at the data pad and the recording of Trig getting killed, and eventually just chucks the data pad, like he's standing on this bridge, into the water. And then he almost starts to throw himself off the edge of the bridge, when somebody grabs him by the jacket, and he is so fucked up, it is not difficult to take this man down. So they're looking up at him, or he's looking up at them. 3 pale-faced men in black leather dusters and chrome glasses stare down at me. Who the fuck? A fist the size of a small dog sends me to darkness. And that's the end of his chapter, and I have no guesses on who this is. None. So then we go to Lysander. And when we left things last time, all of these ships began appearing around them, and they realized that they were outmatched in every sense. And they start to go through what they could possibly do, and there is just no getting away from them. Cassius is really fucking pissed because, in his opinion, this kid, just took so long to retrieve this gold and put them all at risk. And there's a moment here where he says, Lysander says, my grandfather would have tried to save her. And Cassius says, of course he would have. He'd have gutted 100 low colors to save 1 gold life. Today you killed how many? 12? Was it worth it? You could have helped them, but you went for her, one person. And I've got to be real with y'all. It didn't even occur to me in the moment that it was fucked up that he just went for the gold. And the other people were just bystanders that he would get to as long as he could get the gold out. It should have entered my head that was a fucked up way to handle the situation. I should have noticed that. But I'm so used to the golds being the center of this story that I took it for granted saving her was going to be somehow more important to the plot. And likely that is actually correct. However, it should have bothered me, despite knowing that for the plot, that this was the decision that he made without even consciously seeming to think about it. And it bothers me so much that it didn't enter my mind at all. I really feel judgy of myself in this because it wasn't until Cassius actually said the words that I was like, oh God, Yeah, that's true, you know? I wonder how many I could have saved if I'd had more sense. Yikes. It's just part of my own, like, what's the word I want? My own bias after reading these books to just like take it for granted that the gold is going to be the most important and that, you know, she is somebody, quote, worth saving. Because I'm thinking of things in kind of a transactional manner. What are you going to be able to get out of the people that you save versus what's the right thing to do? And I am really disappointed in myself, I gotta say. Um, so they're being surrounded and they once again keep on discussing some things. Oh, this is the chance they'll have a warship even 6 days away from where we enter is negligible. Our ship shudders again. Pytha jerks in her seat. Blood dribbles down her lips. She's bitten her tongue. Her mouth guard wobbles on the console. I pry open her teeth and push the thin slip of plastic in. I made a mistake in there, but this is a matter of probability. We can slip over the line, shed the Ascomani, fix our engines, then no ship has crossed into rim space in 10 years. I won't risk starting a war. Then what's your plan? We turn around and fight. We can get inside one of their ships, turn the guns on the other corvettes. I've seen men do it. We're not those men, I say. His warrior vanity looks wounded. I bet it does. And we don't have a launch tube on the rear of the ship. We'd have to pivot the ship starboard, and then we'd fire back into a fusillade of railgun fire. Railgun. That's the word I was remembering before. Then the word rail makes me think of like a long, like a rod of metal, basically. So what about S1392? The asteroid? It's the one the gold bought passage to. It's 2 hours away, 3 hours closer than the line. Before she fell unconscious, the girl said help was there. And Cassius is like, what kind of help? Do you have anything other than that? And he says, no, but basically it's our probably best option. And he's like, yeah, here's the thing. Did she have a scar? And Lysander lies, and says, no, 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 no. I was genuinely surprised that his lie gets found out within the same chapter. I thought that would take a little longer. So that is what they do. They head to S1392. What Lysander then goes and does is he cares for the gold who is so injured. And he really makes an effort to, like, first of all, keep her modesty, intact with a medical blanket. Just cleaning the oil off of her body, and also replaces that skin over her so that she's still in disguise. And eventually she wakes up, she's conscious, and is looking at him with a sort of almost like affection. I think that the gentleness and the consideration in the way he is treating her has gone a long way to getting her to trust him here, because he didn't know that she was conscious, so he wasn't doing this to just make himself look trustworthy. This is how he comported himself when she was unconscious, or so he thought. So they get to the asteroid in about under 2 hours. The whole ship vibrates as the largest of the Ascomani craft locks onto our hull with a tow beam, slowing our velocity. Our guns are twisted scrap. Our shields are gone. Cassius turns to me as he tightens the screws on the gauntlets of his pulse armor. We meet them at the door. I want you to stay behind me. There's not enough room in the corridors for us to fight side by side. If I fall, make sure they do not take you alive. And they're noticing that somebody is jamming the navigation on the ship. They don't have that kind of tech, so they're like, who is doing this? And then they see all of these other ships appear. Or is it all, or is it just one? It's just one. But when he's speaking in the plural later, it's because he's assuming that there are multiple, like, Peerless Guard. Uh, a first-rate destroyer races toward us, 1.3 kilometers long, brimming with weapons and high-grade shielding. And flanking it are 2 torch ships of an unfamiliar design. Okay, so there are multiple ships. I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't keep that straight. They close the distance in half a minute and speed silently past us to shred the Askamani ships without even the formality of a radio broadcast. The fighter squadrons deliver elegant death as they lace the Askamani with railgun fire and spit off missiles that crackle silently over the blast-scored hulls of the raiders, till each vessel vents oxygen and shivers apart to float dead and quiet into forever space. So he tries to, like, first his secret comes out. Cassius is like, she had a scar, didn't she? And he's like, yeah. And he just genuinely is like, you lied to me, with, like, this deep hurt. And they open transmission, and this voice says, attention Archimedes, this is the Rim Dominion destroyer Carbitus. I think that's one of the creatures that is on either side of this, like, of the river that Ulysses travels in the Odyssey. Your communications equipment is neutralized. Any deviation from present course will result in the destruction of your vessel. Charybdis. That's how you say it, I think. Stand by for boarding. Charybdis, we are not in violation of rim space. We are in neutral territory. This is a violation of Pax Ilium. We are not in rim space. No response. Better our own kind than Askamani, I say, though I'm disquieted by the fear I see in his eyes and Pytha's. We can reason with them. Reason? Bring me the Phaceum, Pytha. I look at him and wonder if his fear is warranted. Lysander, get my box and yours and put it in the vault. So they have to hide everything that identifies them for who they are. And then it's time for him to use this mask, and that he's like, do you have any stims left? Because he doesn't. And Lysander's like, I used them on the gold. You don't? And he's like, no, I don't. So, of course, for a moment, Lysander is like, I guess you can't use it. And Cassius says, you know what? He says, pain's just a memory. And Pytha is like, you can't do this without stims. And he's just like, I don't have time. I'm doing it. And I'm like, what is it? You guys. Oh my God. There is a sibilant hiss as the 300 needles built into the plastic of the scrambler mask spring forward into the skin, bone, and cartilage of Cassius' face. He jerks once, twice, and then a gurgling scream escapes from beneath the mask like seething steam from a kettle. His muscles knot and clench rock hard as he thrashes back into me, twisting so viciously with his arms that I think my own will break. He screams babbling, incomprehensible curses as he rolls, kicking out and almost catching Pytha in the shin. The mask mercilessly pumps artificial filler into his face, grafting imitation bone onto his jaw and forehead and eye sockets. In 20 seconds, the mask's indicator blinks from red to yellow, and the worst of Cassius' convulsions begins to fade. He mules and drifts into shallow insentience. The indicator blinks green. I disentangle myself from his arms. There's a stabbing line of pain down my forearm that insinuates a stress fracture. Pytha rushes to Cassius and gingerly unlatches the mask. His face is a bubbling mass of angry, swollen flesh. Like a wax figure strayed too close to flame. Bit by bit, the swelling subsides under the anti-inflammation pack that Pytha applies. When she pulls the pack away, our handsome friend is gone, replaced by a thuggish visage with a primitive forehead, a bulbous, veiny nose, chipped ears, and a slack mouth with engorged, lazy lips. The peerless scar is gone, recessed into this new bronzy visage. Pytha wipes tears from her eyes. I don't know if this is something that is permanent, if this is something that he, like, can't come back from. The fact that she's crying, I had at first thought was an indication of the stress of seeing him do this without the stims. But now I'm like, is it sort of her grieving for him never looking the same again? I, like, is this a permanent thing? I feel like probably if he went to a carver, they could undo this. If it was something that was done so quickly, it's probably the kind of like slapdash job that a carver could undo. But I would guess that you can't just slap that mask back on again and undo it, which is pretty intense. Ugh. Ugh. All right, so then the last of the chapters, 16. Darrow, the Den. All right. I don't even know where to start on this. You guys, I have declared myself as Team Dancer, and frankly, I am sticking with it. I am not happy with Darrow's whole attitude. It's not just what he has done. It's the complete lack of consideration that he could possibly be wrong. It doesn't seem to ever enter his mind. It's a completely foregone conclusion that he did the right thing, is doing the right thing. And it's disturbing to me, that aspect of it, that he just doesn't ever think for a moment, maybe this wasn't the way to handle this, you know? So that's part of it here. And he is meeting with Quicksilver because he is going to borrow one of his ships. They're going to pretend it was stolen. And then he is going to take off with his Howlers. And he is going to go ahead and do some things that I am not approving of at all. So this conversation with Quicksilver is interesting because you guys remember when we first met Quicksilver and he made that whole speech about capitalism, and I said that it really felt like the author was endorsing that. The tone of it felt like the author. And then here, he is very much like, just kill everybody who disagrees with you. And I was sort of like, maybe was I wrong? Like, it's not like the author has to agree with everything the character says just because one time I got the sense that he did. But I started to reconsider when he poses Quicksilver as being this ruthless. I was like, maybe I was going too hard on him. And maybe he's aware of what that speech sounded like. And the whole point is that Quicksilver is ruthless and believes in a bit of a fairy tale regarding capitalism. But I don't know. I may be wrong about that. I don't know. So and the way that Darrow speaks of him, he's a strange creature full of malice and selfishness and rigid ideology. And I was like, I don't know. I really was convinced that was the author speaking through him in a way. And now I'm sort of like, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe that was just a really well-written speech. And it seemed like the author must believe it because it was very well crafted in some ways, even though I didn't agree with it. So, he says, bring my ship back in one piece. She's Mateo's favorite. My archlancer, Alexander Arcos, Lorne's eldest and brightest grandson, stands behind me. He's a smirking prodigy, blade-thin with long white blonde hair and fair skin. Y'all, if I didn't immediately picture Aemon Targaryen from House of the Dragon. Then my niece Rana, Kieran's headstrong eldest daughter by his first marriage, 20 with a buzzed head and a flat nose. She's only been a Lancer for a year, but is eager to prove herself Alexander's equal. So he says, if the Vox find out you helped me, you might be safer on Phobos. And watch as the mob steals my towers and my companies? I have security teams for a reason. I rebuilt this moon. My fight is here. Shame, you'll miss my birthday. Here's to making the next one. We shake hands, and he departs. So then we go to his meeting with the Howlers. There are 37 in this room. And officially, they have 111. But these are the ones who are able to be here. And I can't remember who it was that got called back from going on like a family vacation, but I really felt a fucking way about that, let me tell you guys. So, um, we meet a couple of new people. One of them is Min Min, a munitions expert who has two prosthetic legs that she has like put up on the table. And when he says this, her metal legs are up on the table. I think he means like she's got her shoes kicked up, but I genuinely thought that he had meant that she had taken her legs off and put them on the table. And he may have meant that, like I could see myself just being like, oh, let me take these off for a second, and just like, I'm not going to leave them on the ground. I'd put them on the table. So it's not out of the question, I guess. Um, and Min Min, it turns out, doesn't even know what's going on. So they have to explain to her, and she looks really horrified and upset. And they have to be like, all right, who the fuck told? Because they are assuming it was somebody that was on their ship that like snitched to Dancer. I maintain, why does anybody need to have snitched to Dancer? If Julia Al Bologna has it out for Darrow, why can't she have just come to Dancer and told him? I feel like it's weird that he hasn't mentioned that as an option, because that's instantly what I thought was happening. And I kind of just expected that to occur to him eventually. And it just never, ever enters his mind. So now he's convinced that there's somebody in his ranks that is betraying him. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's why she would tell. It's two birds with one stone. She fucks you over by telling Dancer, and she gets in your head by making it seem like somebody turned on you. You're falling right into her hands, dude. Are you fucking hearing yourself? And it would be one thing if, like, only he didn't think of it, but nobody mentions that that may be what happened. And I think that feels really inauthentic. And it's making me kind of suspicious that that is indeed what has happened. And the author just doesn't want anybody to be considering that angle because it's going to be a reveal later that nobody betrayed them. And I'm already irritated if that's what it is, because that was instantly my assumption. So it won't be a reveal. It will just be the author writing everybody as a bit dense, to be honest. They're all like usually pretty tactically sound. It does not make any sense and does not feel true to anybody's character that nobody thinks this. It's weird. So I'm just registering my fucking irritation with this because I don't like it. And considering how irritated I am with Darrow in general, I don't feel like we need any additional irritations on that front. I just, we're at capacity as far as I'm concerned. Um, so anyway, I trust everyone in this room, I say, knowing it's what they need to hear, but it's not true. The leak had to come from someone in this room. No, it did not, though. No, it didn't. It didn't. It didn't. Anyway, literally anybody that you were meeting with that you refused to entertain could have told. It doesn't even have to be Julia. There were other people there. I don't know why you are so certain of this. It's weird. It just feels for me very contrived. And this author is usually good about not doing this. So I feel extremely let down by it because this is clearly going to be kind of a thing, and I don't want it to be a thing. I don't, it's going to feel tedious that he hasn't thought of this. If we keep circling back to his suspicion over and over again, I'm going to get very, very impatient with it very quick. So anyway, I just had to get that out. So what this comes down to is that he wants to go for the Ash Lord and are his Howlers behind him. And Victra says, the core and the Ash Lord, like, they aren't going to work together. Even the hostages Octavia used to keep Even the hostages Octavia used to keep are born hating the Ash Lord. Never forget, never forgive. They do not have to fight together, Sephi says. They only have to fight against us. With the heavy casualties the Obsidians faced on Mercury, I know she doesn't relish that prospect. Then why didn't her senators vote to support me? And Rana calls Dancer a bastard. Darrow stands up for him, but everybody seems to be really pissed at him. They're calling him sanctimonious. I thought it was like actually a little remarkable, almost surprising at first how unified everybody seems about saying fuck you, Dancer. It just it makes sense when I sort of step back and think about it that if you are a Howler and you work so closely with Darrow, that you are going to trust him in a way that other people might not, and have a certain kind of loyalty to him that ensures you will be on his side when he makes a certain decision. So once I thought about it, I was like, okay, the fact that they're on his side with this, I guess this works. But as the conversation continues, more and more people are beginning to sort of show some uncertainty. Um, And Pebble is like, well, why can't your wife do anything? And of course, Victra, she's like, what do you think she can do? The whole thing is that they're like fighting tyranny, and she's going to just come in and let her husband do whatever he fucking wants. And she's going to say that everybody can go screw. Like, how is that going to look? The whole way that she has become sovereign, even she has changed a lot of the way the power setup is so that she doesn't have the kind of unilateral power that the sovereign used to have. So she has, like, in some ways, neutered herself a bit. And that is for the best, in my opinion. That's how it should work. But then you run into this sort of thing. Um, and it's interesting because Sephi is like staring down Darrow throughout this, and Victra seems to not see that at all. So she's going, oh, as soon as they see our obsidians, they're going to piss their pants. And it's like she's not reading the room. She is just so, she's taking it so for granted that they have these obsidians, which is very, very on brand for Victra. She takes for granted that other colors are going to be at their disposal. That is how her mind works. And I like Victra, but that is something that really bothers me about her. And I want her to be better about it. And she's really not improving much. She's just sort of comforting herself that if she's better than her bullshit mother or father, then she's enough of an improvement that she gets a pass. And I just don't buy into that at all. So, um, and Victor says, attend the peace talks. Once that prick Dancer is put in a cell, we give the Ash Lord our diplomatic reply and send him the head of Julia Albalona back in a box, mouth stuffed with grapes. Uh, and everybody, like a lot of people in the room, I started to say everybody, but a lot of people are nodding, but some people are sort of like, I don't like this. And Darrow is saying, look, I don't want to start a civil war. That is not what I'm interested in doing. But kind of, it feels like he is. It doesn't feel like he's being fully honest with himself. That's, you know. So anyway, this is when Holiday dissents and is like, if you fucking do that, I'm out. You know I have followed you through everything. I support what you fought for. And this isn't it. And I would rather work for the Republic as a governing body than just follow you as a person, which I think is the right attitude to have. And of course, Severo, for him, loyalty to a person is really the thing. Severo has a very different outlook and personality. He is not an idealist. He is somebody driven by emotion. And that requires a personal relationship, you know? So he says that Holiday is right. And he says, Dancer in the Vox Populi are being played. He wants me to use the seventh. He wants me to dissolve the Senate and seize power. It would fracture the colors and allow him to pry them away by offering stability. I know him. I will not break the Republic, and I will not be a prisoner. Look, maybe, yes, maybe. If so, why has it not yet occurred to you that Julia could have come and told? It doesn't follow. If you think that this is a setup, that Dancer's being played, why has it not occurred to you that them finding out is part of the setup? What are you thinking? What is the matter with you, dude? Are you fucking, hello? McFly, anybody home? I'm just, mm, mm. So then, Holiday, we have his like next step. Uh, I am leaving the moon tonight. The question is, who's coming with me? To where? If I tell you, then you're party to conspiracy. You will be outlaws. Some of you have doubts about this. That I understand. You followed me to Luna, to Mars, Earth, and Mercury. I will not pressure you now to compromise your oath to the Republic. We are family. We will survive this. But if you think your duty is here, it is time for us to part. Veil willing, we will see one another again soon. And so Holiday decides to take her leave and agrees to watch over his family. She leaves, and Severo says, any other cowards? And I was just like, Severo, I really like you sometimes. And then you act like this. And I'm just like, eye roll. It's just funny, too, because, like, calling it cowardice, that was guts. Holiday deciding to stand up and be like, I'm sorry, I draw the line here, I'm out. That is real bravery. And I find it funny that he doesn't see it at all. He just values a certain type of bravery, and this isn't it. Again, he doesn't understand serving an ideal. So then Sephi, she bails as well, and is basically like, look, it's been 10 years, and so many of us have died, and we have gone into this over and over again on your behalf, and like, I can't keep doing this. I'm asking for my people to keep sacrificing themselves when golds are still in charge. You know, the rest of the colors still look at us like we're animals. And, you know, nobody listens to us. Why am I fighting for this again? And Severo, perfectly illustrating her point, calls her, you dumb yeti. She's just given this like very elaborate, well chosen speech. And she gets right to the heart of the matter. And he's calling her a dumb yeti. Like, thank you, sir, for immediately proving her point. Wow. So she says, basically, I'm queen, and whatever I do, they will do. And I can't keep this up anymore. You guys got to fight your own battle. I've spoken. If we do not meet again in this world, I will save a seat for you in the mead hall beside Ragnar and my kin. So, then he says, we're going to Venus to find the Ash Lord and cut off his head, Darrow says. Now that's what I call diplomacy, Severo says. He laughs maniacally and jumps atop the table, boots shattering a coffee cup. Who's up for some blood? He howls hideously, his old mania vibrating through the room. Min Min shoots up from her seat and howls, and soon the room wails with a cacophony of 24 maniacs, pretending we do not feel the hollowness of the howl absent so many of our friends. You guys, I was so glad that part of the sentence followed, because once Severo stands and starts howling, I was like, oh God, this is sad. Like, instantly, the vibe for me was like, what, you're trying to pretend a thing here, dude. I get why your instinct is to do this, but like, this is almost embarrassing. And then that sentence, and we go to, I watch Victra motionless in her seat, her hand on her newest child, watching in horror as her husband pretends he's young again. I'm really glad that the scene was meant to feel that way, because the profound, it was cringe in a way that has never happened before to me when reading these characters. I have always, sometimes I have been a bit bemused at their willingness to risk themselves and their bloodthirstiness, but always I have felt the energy in the moment. And this is one of the times, like, it's the only time so far where I was genuinely like, you're really trying to, like, get an energy going here that feels like inappropriate to the moment, to be honest, you know? So, yeah, I'm disappointed, Darrow. I really am. And I don't doubt that you think you're doing the right thing, but that's the problem. The problem isn't that you are a bad man doing things you know are bad. It's that I think you're a good man doing bad things that you think are the right thing. And that's really not a position I have seen you in often. And this is a pretty big statement you're going to make. And considering you're the sovereign's husband, I feel like you're fucking her pretty hard and not in the good way. So, all right, guys, I am going to wrap this up. Thank you again so much for coming and hanging out. Thank you to Ashley for commissioning this one. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.